We learn from elders. We learn from survival. We learned from each other. For trans guys. Wisdom you can feel. Real talk. Collective care. Well, welcome to For Trans Guys. I'm Megan.
I'm Zander.
I'm David.
I'm Reid.
I'm JJ.
Welcome to this impromptu episode of Ask a Therapist. Why are jerky people so angry about the fact that trans people exist?
Well, there's probably multiple reasons. They may have had some personal experience of a family member transitioning, because the family goes through a period of letting go, and there's a grief process involved for them. My family had to adjust to losing the youngest sister. I became the youngest brother. And there's some grief involved with that, and that can turn to anger. Like, how are you doing this to us? Why are you doing this to us? But they're not owning it as their grief. They're putting it on the trans person. So there can be an element of that. There can also be an element of really believing, maybe they have religious beliefs that say, this is evil, wrong, you're going to hell. I'm mad about that. How dare you do this? And you're keeping on going with it, even though I'm mad at you, so it makes me even more mad. So there's multiple reasons that people could be upset. But I found as a therapist that a lot of it came back to family relationship. If it's someone that they had no relationship with at all, then it probably does have to do with their religious beliefs, or maybe it's a coworker who's transitioning and they do have some grief about that. Maybe it's someone who's a close friend. Because if you transition from, like I went from being perceived as a lesbian to being a trans guy, my best friends aren't the same people anymore. That doesn't mean they don't like me and value me in their life, but it's not the same kind of relationship. And when people feel like you're forcing them to change a deep relationship, they're mad. They don't want to have to do it.
But are there any good strategies to get someone to stop? Like, if a stranger on the internet is obsessed and they just keep pick,
Well, you know,
are there any strategies that actually help?
Yeah, block them.
That's what I was going to say.
Ignore them, block them.
Yeah,
Right.
because
You can't fix them.
Why
No.
would you use some of your own energy that you're supposed to be using for yourself and your family and your friends? Why are you wasting it on them when you don't even know them? So what's your purpose in trying to bring them around? Are you trying to justify yourself? So I would get a client to look inside, like, why
Yeah.
do you want to focus on this? Because what's the point? And I would help them see, oh, yeah, there is no point in that, is there? Because if they're going to change, it's going to be because of someone closer to them helping them along that journey. Why should it be me? Because it doesn't use my energy effectively.
Yeah. And there's nothing to justify,
Right.
nothing to defend,
There's that too.
right? But if there's if a person has an internal sense of, I'm not good enough, I'm not trans enough, I'm not masculine enough, whatever their internal frame is, and then they see people on the outside saying those same things, they believe it about themselves, it's really gonna hurt. So we have to work on ways to not believe it,
Yeah.
right? It's not true.
Right.
That's the start. It's not true. But
And one thing that really turned me around fairly early in my transition, when I was still telling people, I hadn't even really changed my name yet, much less started taking hormones. And one friend of mine said, I've never forgotten this because it was so powerful. She said, what a gift to be able to live as more than one sex in the same lifetime.
yeah.
I had never heard anybody term trans identity as a gift. And it completely changed my perspective, and I understood what she was saying immediately, because it's true. I could sit with a couple in my office and it didn't matter what gender they had been assigned at birth, I had lived it. And talk about an advantage for a therapist. And there's multiple aspects of life. I'm married to a woman now, and it's not that I have lived her experience at all, but I have lived as a woman. I know what that feels like to walk down the street after dark by yourself. I know what that feels like. That feeling of just being on edge and aware.
Yeah.
So it is a gift. And I tried to help my clients realize that, to turn things around, because there's so much negative perception of trans identity, especially in this day and age. I'm glad I transitioned 30 years ago. It was not on anybody's radar, really. I could transition, be totally at peace. I would tell people, they'd be surprised that was the end of it. Not now. So if I was still a therapist today, I would be helping people navigate that space. When you're early in transition, you're learning a new gender role, a new way to move through the world. If you are in an all-female or all-male space and you've transitioned in that direction, you have no idea what the social boundaries are.
Yeah.
And you don't really want to tell anybody, especially if they are seeing you as a man or as a woman for the first time. I wish there's an anniversary I wish everybody could track, and nobody knows when it is. The last time a stranger misgenders you. When was the last time? No one knows when it is. It just sinks in gradually. Wow, that's never going to happen again.
Mm-hmm.
But then you're in an all-male or all-female space and you realize, I wasn't raised to this role. I don't really know what I'm supposed to do here. And it's scary.
Yeah.
Because you don't want to come out to them and tell them, because you're finally being seen the way you see yourself. So it raises a lot of doubt in people that they're able to move through the world, and it's a period of transition. It's a stage.
And a bumbling around.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Getting it. How does this work for me now?
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
like being a teenager.
It is.
Well,
Yeah,
and then there's the hormones. You're rocketed back to adolescence, and you really are a teenager again. And if you're 45 and working a job, your coworkers don't really know what to do with you.
Yeah.
So you have to hide that from them to some degree or other, but they just know there's something different.
Reid, you mentioned family dynamics, and you mentioned religious reasons why. I think there's also cultural,
Yeah.
right? There are different cultures
Yeah.
from around the world that exist in the United States. We're a pluralistic society, and so we have trans guys that are growing up in all these different cultures, and some are more welcoming than others. And so that makes a big difference, I think. And I think it's a somewhat taboo topic to talk about culture, but that could be what's happening for people. I think what also is happening is that there are individuals that call themselves trans. Maybe they are. I don't know. It's hard for me to know who is and who isn't, right? It's up to somebody to say it. Who are putting messages out into the world, primarily through social media, that I find counterproductive and hostile, threatening. And I think those kinds of messages are being amplified by people who have reservations about us, who think, I don't think I like those people. And then they see examples of people referring themselves as trans, maybe even being trans, who are doing and saying things that they find really offensive in private spaces like bathrooms or around children, right? And so when they amplify those things out into the world to say, look at what these trans people are doing, if I wasn't trans and I knew nothing about it except those things, I wouldn't like us either. So I think there's, how much responsibility do we have as community members to be calling out people in our own community for putting out really negative messaging? Messaging that's getting amplified, that's turning people against us, that's creating laws against us, that's trying to restrict our access to things. It's happening not in isolation. It's not just people dreaming up these things. There are those people, of course, but I think some people are being influenced because they're seeing really negative messaging from places like TikTok. And that, I think, is unfortunate, and I don't like it. I'm not on TikTok, but I see it when other people are sharing it, and I don't want to see it either.
Yeah.
But I take into a lot of consideration how much of that is even real.
I don't even know.
You can't know on social media.
But it's still informing people's opinions about us.
Well, it may be, but
Yeah.
there's people out there impersonating us, you know.
But we
You
can't even
can't
say,
tell.
because they get to self-ID.
Right.
So we don't get to even question it.
No, but
Nobody can, right?
No, we can just respond to the best,
Yeah.
like you say, counter.
There isn't a lot of that, though. There's not a lot of inner community responding publicly to those messages.
Slightly off of that kind of topic is like, there are some people in the trans community that seem to be energized by being grumpy about other trans people. I'm trying to say it as nice as possible. Like, for example, I get messages sometimes that, like, if I have a book event about trans history, other trans people will call the museum and say, you can't have them at your event because their wife is Jewish or whatever. Like, pick a thing that is either a political reason or just, I don't know, is it jealousy? Is it, what's the deal with all of that infighting? I remember a lot of the conferences in the early 2000s, we would come to talk about like spirituality and spend 3 days just trying to define the word transgender and leave angrier than we came because no one could ever even figure out who was in the community because they didn't like this thing or that thing. Like, is there a like psychological place that comes from? And like, same question, why? And is there a way externally to like make it better or not?
Well, as a therapist, I tried to help people not only get in touch with exactly who they are, because that's the only way you can make a decision about what form of transition works for me. But I also help them understand that everybody's answer is different because we are all different. I mean, here are our stories. Our stories bear no resemblance to each other. But we all, maybe, I don't even know if this is true, do we all call ourselves trans men? Are we trans guys? Do we use two words for trans and man? I don't. I put them together because I see it as a different form of gender. We all have different definitions. But there's a lot of anger that people internalize as they grow up, like my cousin saying I was a very angry child. Well, of course I was. I was assigned female at birth in the 1950s, and I had no idea that wasn't the right thing. I hadn't learned yet to hide the anger. But when you hide the anger, you're burying it in here. And then it erupts in different ways, and you may not even have any clue where it really comes from because it doesn't come from some stranger on the internet. You're not really mad about that person. You're mad about something else that happened in your life 35 years ago, and you haven't dealt with it or let it to the surface yet.
A book that I read a number of years ago, it's probably a classic now, by Virginia Ramey Mollenkott, Omnigender. And I think that touches your question because we're not all in the same place. I feel personally like I'm really on an extreme end of the masculine. And so that's why I transitioned the way I did. I mean, I hadn't read the book at the time, but I understand it now in retrospect. And I think if people took some time to listen, to get to know people whose path is a little different, who even read that book or a book, others that help, it would help expand the concept that there's only one. There's only one way to transition. There's only one way. I mean, when I came out again as an adult, clergy, the thing that shocked me probably more than anything else was that my own community didn't necessarily welcome me. And some of the people that were the harshest to me were other trans men. And it's like, I didn't expect that. I needed support, you know? And it wasn't there.
I think it is hardwired, though. Just neurologically, we're hardwired towards belonging, but tribalism, right? That's our fight or flight system is based on going all the way, going back and back in time. And if you wandered away from your tribe, you were probably going to die. You didn't want to be alone because you could have been eaten by the tiger or killed or taken hostage by the other tribe. And so we tribe up. That's how our brains work. And so you see it play out in cliques in high school. You see it. So in our community, right? It's like if we do a little old school and say FTM community, well, there's a whole lot of sub communities, and we're gonna have that. We're clicking off because it's for safety. It's for safety reasons. But I don't know about any of you, but and I learned this about my father when I was a teenager that I didn't know, is that when I was in school, I never clicked up. I had friends in many cliques. I hung out, and my father, it turns out he was exactly the same. So I don't know if that's my hard wiring, because he never told it to me. I just did it naturally. Because it didn't make any sense to me to just hang out with these kids, because I had all these other interests. Yeah, I was gonna hang out with the skaters, but when they started smoking pot, I went over here, right? But I was also in sports, so I hung out with the jocks, and I had a girlfriend who was a cheerleader. So I was, right, and so I was always with these other kinds of kids. I like this kind of music, so I hung out with these kids. But they stayed in their little silos. I didn't do that. And I do that in our community. I go all over the place. But some people stay very siloed. And when you stay in those silos, whether that's your class, your religion, your race, your ethnicity, your political leanings, your gender identity, when you stay like that and then you protect it, right? When you protect it and anything else is a threat, then we can't get along.
Right.
And if we can't get along, how are we expecting the broader society to welcome us in?
Well, that's a good
And
point.
how are we expecting or hoping for the broader society to become less tribal?
Well, we can't.
We
That's just an inevitable. We're tribal.
That's humanity.
How do we live with it?
Yeah.
well
We get to know each other.
exactly.
That's
we
how.
build community.
And then when tribes join up together, they're stronger together.
Right.
But you have to be able to trust that it's a mutual interest, not a self-interest, which
Exactly.
is, okay, we're going to invite them in, and then we're going to take all their weapons. Right?
One of the things you mentioned is building community, and that's something that I think we're trying to do outside of the four trans guys' work, is to create a space of ready community for trans guys to hang out and have this kind of conversation,
Yeah.
to be intentional, and to be very minded about supporting each other, because that is, it seems a lot of our experiences is we have not seen that support. One of the things that I also noticed when I was a kid, I was much more of a chameleon. I would try and fit in whatever everyone else wanted me to be, to find safety within that. And I don't think that's unique to my experience. I've heard that from many people. And I'm just curious, kind of like from the Ask a Therapist point of view, like, what is it that we're trying to do as we're growing up and we're finding ourselves maybe misfitting in so many different spaces? What is it that we're seeking? Is it tribalism? What are we seeking in that space as we're learning to notice ourselves as trans people eventually? Like, what is that experience
Well,
like?
in my opinion, I think what people, they like to your, I can't even talk anymore. It must be past noon. But I think we are looking for the tribal connections. And what we're realizing very dimly, I help my clients realize this more consciously, the only thing we all had in common, we weren't comfortable with the gender we were assigned at birth. That's the only thing that we could all say, that wasn't quite it, and we had to do something about it. So everything else about us is all different. We don't have anything else in common. But if you understand that, then what that means is you can bond at that very deep level.
Mm-hmm. And then expand your tribe.
Yes,
That's
exactly, because then you have a lot of people in your tribe, but it's just that you're not looking for one particular characteristic to bind you together. It's this discomfort with the gender that's on your birth certificate.
Well, and it's funny because I've had my tonsils out, but I've never once assumed everyone else who had their tonsils out would be in a community with me, right? And so it feels like I know why we want to be in community. There's strength in numbers. I want
Safety.
someone else who understands my experience. The doctors don't even know how to give us advice a lot of times. But it does make me chuckle a little bit to be like, why do I need so much for these other people with a medical journey
Well, see, that's,
to
I think
agree
that's
with me, right?
Well, there are a couple of developmental systems that are specific to, like, there's the 6 stages of coming out for, like, gay and lesbian people, and then Aaron DeVore, a trans man sociologist, created a developmental system for trans people, right? And so in both of those systems, there's something similar, which is, I think in the coming out one, like the homosexual identity or something, there's one stage that I call rainbow ghetto, right? It's like gay everything. You're in the gay community, you go to the gay coffee house, you join the gay thing. That's not the end.
Yeah.
The end is integration.
That's right.
The end is going out into society. But a lot of people end at that stage, you know, the rainbow stage, because they don't want to integrate. They don't believe they can integrate. Quite frankly, some people think that thing that they were supposed to integrate into in order to be whole is a oppressive system, right? If the people who take the queer theory way of thinking about things, right? So there's something similar about going out into the community. It's like, I'm still well connected with the FTM community. I'm, larger trans community. I do a lot in that way, but I spend most of my life now outside the community, because I don't need to preach to the congregation. Right? I want to go out.
Stage job. Yeah.
Well, that's true. But it's not a congregation of all trans people, right? So that's the thing. It's like taking the message through our lives.
Right.
It doesn't have to be a sermon or a song, or it can just be our lives,
our
and
lives.
taking it out into the broader world. So then they can be like, oh, well, that Libs of TikTok thing that was promoted across the platform about some wacky person saying they're trans, and maybe they are doing, I think, crazy things, offensive things. Then they can meet me and go, oh, you're the same as that person? Not really, but okay, sure. But then they're going to have that dissonance.
Right.
Like, there's a trans person, here's a trans person, now they don't understand. Then I think it causes them to go out and explore and get some questions answered.
But Zander, you did the work. It sounds like you went from that rainbow ghetto
Absolutely.
to integration. And I think there's that step that a lot of people I've experienced as a peer supporter have not been willing to recognize. It's that willingness to sit with ourselves, to listen to ourselves, to integrate any of the grief and the challenges that we're experiencing to get to full integration. And that's really hard, in my experience, to do by ourselves in a silo.
Yeah.
And so
it's recognizing that grief is your journey.
And that distress tolerance, right, through that process, right? And in the rainbow kind of ghetto experience, if I don't want to get to integration, sometimes that might be because I don't want to deal with all of that grief as well. I just want to live in the celebratory joy of rainbow ghetto, whatever that means for me. And that's a lovely space to hang out too, if that's where you need to be.
It is, well, unless it isn't.
Well,
there are elements of it where, I don't know, like the rainbow, community was very comfortable for me as a lesbian. But once I transitioned, it was not so comfortable.
Not at all.
Right? Even though the T is part, right? And so that's, that's part of the issue is maybe some of us spend less time in the rainbow community because it gets rough. And so we find ourselves almost being forced out into the larger community and realizing, it's not actually as hostile as I thought it would be. But I was sequestered off for 20-something years as practically a separatist lesbian, only going out into the larger society when I had to go to the bank or something, or the grocery store. I stayed away from the straight world until all of a sudden I was in a straight marriage looking, you know what I mean? And then I was sort of like, now I've got to go out there and figure it out.
And as a society, we don't talk about that kind of death-dying process or grief process of all those aspects of ourselves. And I'm wondering if there's some wisdom that you guys can share of, if I'm noticing like that's a part of my life and I need to recognize that so I can get to integration, if that's what I'm choosing to do, what are some of the steps that I could even do to not only recognize it, but move through that and to it?
Well, as a therapist, one thing I help my clients recognize and own is that grief is a huge part of transition. Nothing in my life, nothing in any of our lives would stay the same.
That's right. Yeah. And back in the day, the Harry Benjamin standards of care, you were told to make up a history and leave your hometown, and not tell a soul unless there was an absolute emergency.
Yeah.
Well, people would think grief was uncertainty. Grief was like, oh, right, because grief means maybe you're not really trans. Grief is something that is not a popular thing to discuss, because if we're becoming our authentic selves, why would we be grieving?
Well, that's the thing. I had clients, it took me a while. I could see it in them. Easily, I could see it.
Yeah.
They didn't want it to be true.
Yes.
And they didn't want to tell me for sure, because they saw me as the gatekeeper. I'm the one
I won't
who's
get a letter.
Exactly. I'm not going to get my hormone letter if I show any grief. I have to be 100% positive and joyous about this process. And I would say, all of your relationships are changing. Your family's grieving around you. Maybe you're losing a partner over this. You're worried about your job. How can you not have some grief going on here? Mm-hmm. And I would tell them it wouldn't be normal to be 100% positive and cheerful about this when all this is happening around you, in you, to you, through other people. So let's talk about that.
Yeah. Well, it's an ambiguous loss. An ambiguous loss, most people don't even know what it is. And it's a very difficult thing to suss out of yourself and know how to talk about.
Well, that's the other part of the grief, is you don't really know where, like, I had to leave the Portland Lesbian Choir. How could I know then? I would now be approaching 18 years as a member of the Portland Gay Men's Chorus. How am I going to know that in 1996?
That's right.
And we're just scratching the surface of the Ask a Therapist questions that we could ask. So if we didn't get to your question, put it in the comments, and then we'll have Reid back and we'll ask more Ask a Therapist questions.
Yes.
But as we close out kind of this segment, is there anything that you want to say so we can give you the last word?
Oh, the last word. Wow. Be careful. I could talk forever.
Yeah.
One is finding the right therapist is really a key. Because, yes, I did write the hormone letter, but there were people who got that letter from me in the second or third visit because they were ready. They knew they were ready. I felt they were ready. And I said to them, I will be of more use to you after you start taking hormones than before you've written this letter for you. Because it's going to change the way you feel your feelings and think your thoughts, and your relationships will all change again, including the one with yourself. So finding the right therapist, the one that you really feel like you can trust to help you navigate this process, because that's their real role. They're the one that you can tell anything to, hypothetically, as you go along this journey that changes every single thing in your life.